Everywhere else, priests of the gods wear their hair long. In Egypt, they are shaven. For all other men, the rule in mourning for the dead is that those most nearly concerned have their heads shaven. Egyptians are shaven at other times, but after a death, they let their hair and beard grow. The Egyptians are the only people who keep their animals with them in the house. Whereas all others live on wheat and barley, it is the greatest disgrace for an Egyptian to live so. They make food from a coarse grain, which is called spelt. They knead dough with their feet and gather mud and dung with their hands. The Egyptians and those who have learned it from them are the only one who practice circumcision. Every man has 2 garments, every woman only one. The rings and sheets of sails are made fast outside the boat elsewhere, but inside it in Egypt. The Greeks write and calculate from left to right. The Egyptians do the opposite, yet they say that their way of writing is towards the right, and the Greek towards the left. They employ 2 kinds of writing, one is called sacred and the other demotic. They are religious beyond measure, more than any other people. And the following are among their customs. They drink from cups of bronze, which they clean out daily. This is done not by some, but by all. They are especially careful always to wear newly washed linen. They practice circumcision for cleanliness' sake, for they would rather be clean than more becoming. Their priests shave their whole body every other day, so that no lice or anything else foul may infest them as they attend upon the gods. The priests wear a single linen garment and sandals of papyrus. They may have no other kind of clothing or footwear. Twice a day and twice every night they wash in cold water. Their religious observances are, one may say, innumerable. But also they receive many benefits. They do not consume or spend anything on their own. Sacred food is cooked for them. Beef and goose are brought in great abundance to each man every day, and wine of grapes is given to them too. They may not eat fish. The Egyptians sow no beans in their country, if any grow. They will not eat them, either raw nor cooked. The priest cannot endure even to see them, considering beans an unclean kind of legume. Many, not only one, are dedicated to the service of each god. One of these is the high priest, and when a high priest dies, his son succeeds to his office. For the people of Colchis are evidently Egyptian, and this I perceived for myself before I heard it from others. So when I had come to consider the matter, I asked them both, and the Colchians had remembrance of the Egyptians more than the Egyptians of the Colchians. But the Egyptians said that they believed that the Colchians were a portion of the army of Sesostris. That this was so conjectured, myself, not only because they are dark-skinned and have curly hair, this of itself amounts to nothing, for there are other races which are also so. But also still more than the Colchians, Egyptians, and Ethiopians alone of all the races of men have practiced circumcision from the first. The Phoenicians and the Syrians who dwell in Palestine confess themselves that they have learnt it from the Egyptians. And the Syrians about the river Thermodon and the river Parthenios and the Macronians, who are their neighbors, say that they have learnt it only from the Colchians. These are the only races of men who practice circumcision, and these evidently practice it in the same manner as the Egyptians. Of the Egyptians themselves, however, and the Ethiopians, I am not able to say which learned it from the other, for undoubtedly it is a most ancient custom. But that the other nations learnt it by intercourse with the Egyptians, this, among others, is to me a strong proof, namely that those of the Phoenicians who have intercourse with Hellas cease to follow the example of the Egyptians in this manner, and do not circumcise their children.
Welcome back to Covenants and Kingdoms. I am your co-host, Brad. Along with me is...
Hey, I'm Nathan. How y'all doing today? I just put a y'all in there.
Well,
I'm from Alabama. That's what we say.
If you
that's how we introduce
tell already, we are from the South.
Right.
Yeah, in Birmingham, Alabama. Thank you guys for joining us. And as always, we're brought to you by Baba Java Coffee. If you are looking for ethically sourced specialty coffee in the Birmingham area, go check us out at babajavacoffee.com. Use the code COVENANTS and you'll get 10% off your order. And we've got some great coffees in right now. We just went to Columbia and about to get some really, really nice coffees from Columbia in. So be on the lookout for that, and you can order today. So go
Please
do it.
Take advantage. 10% off. You're going to get the coffee anyway.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you're going to drink coffee anyway. You might as well get 10% off.
You might as well.
Yeah.
All right, Nathan. That was a wild story about circumcision.
Yeah, so he's talking about, that's Herodotus, obviously. I know all of you know that was Herodotus.
I mean, if you don't know, what are you doing with your life?
So that was Herodotus, and Herodotus is called, and we're going to quote Herodotus a lot. I love Herodotus. He's called the father of history by some, because he's the first one that systematically tried to put. He was writing about the Greek and Persian wars. Okay, that was his intention, but he adds all of the background from some of the other cultures. We just talked about the Egyptians, so the Greek culture, Persian, some of the steppe peoples, other cultures that are around Greece and the ancient Near East at the time.
When was he alive? What were the times?
He was alive in the early 5th century BC.
Okay,
so
all right,
when the Greek and Persian wars were happening.
Gotcha.
And he wrote about it. He's also called the father of anthropology because he wrote about like the customs and cultures of other cultures. So in this excerpt, he's talking about the Egyptians also, obviously. So he was talking about Egyptians, and the reason I chose this passage is because he's talking about Egyptians and their practice of circumcision. Okay, so we're gonna go through Genesis 17 today and talk about circumcision, and we'll get pretty deep into the theology of circumcision. We'll go on some of the basic theological points first, and then we'll go a little bit deeper in how it relates to our modern practice of baptism. Okay, and we'll take a little detour and talk about Moses and circumcision, because there was a very interesting story in Exodus 4, which we'll talk about in a few years when we get to Exodus. We'll talk about Moses, and we'll go through that story a little bit in more detail.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll touch on that today. Okay, so let's read Genesis 17.
When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless, that I may make my covenant between me and you, and may multiply you greatly. Then Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, Behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you into nations, and kings shall come from you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your offspring after you. And I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And God said to Abraham, As for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your offspring after you, throughout their generations. This is my covenant which you shall keep, between me and you and your offspring after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised. Every male throughout your generations, whether born in your house or bought with your money from any foreigner who is not of your offspring. Both he who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money shall surely be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh, an everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. And God said to Abraham, As for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of peoples shall come from her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed, and said to himself, Shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, Oh, that Ishmael might live before you. God said, No, but Sarah your wife shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. When he had finished talking with him, God went up from Abraham. Then Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all those born in his house or bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that very day, as God had said to him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, and Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. That very day Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised, and all the men of his house, those born in the house and those bought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with him.
Genesis 10 and 11, the table of nations. Genesis, the 70 nations, or 72. In Genesis 11, we read the story of the Tower of Babel. Okay? So in Babel the people of Babel were disinherited. Deuteronomy 32, 8 and 9. They were disinherited because they followed other gods, and they wanted to ascend the mountain to be like the Most High, like Isaiah 14, right? We've talked about that many times, and we'll keep talking about it. So they were disinherited. God confused their language. He came down, saw that what was going on, confused their language, scattered them. And as they were scattered, they were disinherited, okay? To be left to their own devices, to follow their gods. Follow their God. You want to follow the gods? Follow them. Do it. And they did. And practice their own, Isaiah 53, they were like, each man
did what was right in their own sight.
Did what was right in their own eyes,
yeah. Right?
So, and then we read in Deuteronomy 32, 8 and 9 that God took a people for himself called, in Deuteronomy 8, 32, 9, he calls them Jacob, Israel, okay? And so Israel was taken as his inheritance from Abram. So in Genesis 12, we saw the call of Abram from Mesopotamia, right? So from Mesopotamia, the place where the Tower of Babel and all the events of Genesis 11 happened, from that area, he called Abram. And so we talked about Abram and the three parts of the Abrahamic covenant. He made a covenant with Abram. We talked about that in detail, okay? Genesis 15, he cut a covenant with Abram, and that covenant was had three parts to it, right? Mm-hmm. He said he was going to have a seed, okay, and we talked about how that seed was through Isaac initially, through Israel, and then eventually Jesus fulfilled that, okay? The seed, as Paul said, one seed in Galatians, right? And then we talked about that a land. So this land, cosmic geography, this is the land God claimed for his own, right? Mm-hmm. He said Jerusalem was the center of the earth. Is it literally the center of the earth? Well, it actually kind of might be. I mean, it's in the Middle East, right? So maybe, I don't know. But anyway, he says the center of the earth. It's not literally the center of the earth. The core would be at the center of the earth.
Yeah, right.
And then a blessing. The blessing is the main thing that we've talked a lot about, all right? And then so in Genesis 15, we talked about the second half, he cut a covenant with Abram. And so we talked about how God himself, so they, in the cutting the covenant, we went through all the elements, right? Where they exchanged clothes, they exchanged weapons, they exchanged names, and Abram became
Abraham.
He went from Avram to Abraham, right?
Correct.
Because he took part of Yahweh into his name. It's just
really neat.
It's just amazing. So remember, we talked about the name theology, the name of Yahweh. We talked about that a lot. The name means It's not just a name. It's just not words.
the
It's not
presence of
letters.
God.
It's the presence of God. So when you take his name so when Abram took part of Yahweh's name into him, it means the presence of God was with him. It's just an amazing thing if you just
very
think
cool.
about it. Okay, so he cut the covenant, and so instead of Abram at this point, part of it was the letting of blood. Okay, cutting yourself, cutting the animals, and saying, "Let this be done to you if you don't fulfill the elements of this covenant, whatever covenant it was." We talked about those ancient Near Eastern practices. And so we said that God himself was the one who was going to fulfill that covenant, and he would be the one eventually in Jesus. Again, we're reading back into this. My Jewish friends don't agree with this, but listen, Jesus is the one who fulfills it. All right, Jesus fulfills it. Let me stop here for just a minute. So we've gotten a lot of flack about saying, and I agree with partly with what they're saying. And we'll talk when we're going to get to Colossians 2 later. If you say that you can't see Jesus in the Old Testament, I agree with that 100%. Why? Well, because Jesus is a special case. Jesus is the God-man, okay? He is the incarnate Word, okay? So there's no incarnate Word in the Old Testament. We don't read anything about that. However, in Colossians 2, we're going to talk about how Jesus is he took the entire divinity, the fullness of the divinity into himself. He is the fullness of the divinity. We're going to read the account of Mark a little bit, where the Holy Spirit came upon him, the baptism of the Spirit, and God's Spirit was in him. He was Yahweh in flesh. So he's fully God, fully man. That's our theology, right? And so that is not in we don't see that in the Old Testament.
Right.
However, we've seen over and over and over and over and over and over again many passages throughout the whole entire Old Testament in every place, okay? The whole Tanakh, okay? So from the Torah to all the prophets to the writings, all of it. There's Yahweh physically manifested. Remember, Yahweh said, "A man cannot see me and live." So the fullness of the spiritual Yahweh cannot be, our senses can't handle it, okay? We would die. So he manifested himself in a way that he can interact with humans and be with his people. He wanted to tabernacle. He wanted to live with his people. So is the incarnate Jesus in the Old Testament? No. Is the fullness of Yahweh physically manifested in the Old Testament? Throughout it, okay?
Yeah.
So if you say that's Jesus, it's not the incarnate Jesus. Right. If you say that is Yahweh physically manifested, yes, it is. So he is, period. Over and over again in the Old Testament. It's clear.
Yeah. It's somewhat semantics, but you're right. Jesus is born, listen, Jesus existed from eternity. Okay, so
if he's Yahweh, if he's Yahweh, yes, he did.
Exactly.
But the
taking on flesh,
the incarnate Jesus did not exist until he was born. Right?
Right.
So the spiritual 100%. Aspect of him as an Elohim, as a spiritual entity, is Yahweh.
Is eternal.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's eternal.
Yeah.
Okay? So as the second Yahweh, he's eternal.
Yeah.
Right? As the incarnated Jesus Christ, it happened with Mary.
Yeah.
Right? With Miriam.
Right. His flesh. Yes.
Okay. We want to get that clear. Is Jesus the incarnate in the Old Testament? No. Is Yahweh physically manifested in the Old Testament? Throughout. Okay, that's where we stand. All right.
We're gonna get some comments about that too.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm happy. I don't mind comments, and I don't mind constructive
criticism.
Well, it's not criticism; it's constructive discussion.
There you go. Yeah.
Because I'm basing this on logic and reading the Bible and actually reading and knowing what the Bible says instead of just clips where you think are taking verses out of context and things like that. Read it all. Okay, it's not just things out of context. Okay, now we're actually going to get to the passage. Okay, so that was background. Abram was 99 years old, and in verse 1, and who appeared to him? Yahweh, the Lord. Yeah. Yahweh appeared to Abram and said to him. Remember, it still doesn't call him Abraham yet until later, but Abram and said to him, "I am God Almighty." Okay. I'm God Almighty. The Lord appeared to him. Again, the fullness of Yahweh cannot appear to a man and the man live. He said that, right? So this is a visible manifestation of Yahweh. Maybe physical, but at least a visible manifestation of Yahweh to Abram here, okay? And he tells him, who am I? I'm God Almighty, Shaddai, right? El Shaddai. Walk before me and be blameless, that I may make my covenant between me and you and multiply you greatly. Like he already promised, okay? The covenant's already there. He's already cut the covenant. Then Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, behold, again, my covenant is with you. So we talked about this brit, this covenant between Abram and God and Yahweh. And you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. Again, we've talked about the elements of the Abrahamic covenant. No longer shall your name be, here we go, called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham. For I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you into nations, and kings shall come from you. And I will establish my covenant, my brit, between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant. To be God to, okay, so an everlasting covenant, all right? Did he say, if you do these things, I will be your God and bless you, and I will multiply you? Did he say that somewhere in this verse, in these passages?
Not in this
If
one,
you
no.
do this, then I will do this.
No, he didn't in this section. No.
He said,
I will.
I will.
Establish.
I will.
Mm-hmm.
I will.
Yep.
Okay? And I will establish my covenant between you and your offspring throughout your generations for an everlasting covenant forever. Okay? Milam. To be God to you and to your offspring after you. And I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. Or again, this is cosmic geography. Okay? All right. Verse 9. And God said to Abraham, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your offspring after you, throughout their generations. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you. Every male of you shall be circumcised. Okay, so this is the place where circumcision was brought about here.
Ouch.
Hannah, it was brought about. God saying, bring it about.
That's right.
And here it is. Okay. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your offspring after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant. A sign. Okay. Does he say this is the covenant?
No, it's a sign.
Okay. It's a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who's 8 days old shall be circumcised, every male throughout your generations, whether born in your house or bought with your money, or any foreigner who is not your offspring. Both he who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money shall be surely be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh as an everlasting covenant. Okay, verse 14. Any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be
Cut off
from his people. He has broken my covenant. Okay? So, as a nation, the inheritance, God has taken Israel to himself, right? And he promised an everlasting covenant in verse 7, right? So,
It's amazing.
how do we reconcile verse 7 and then verse 14? So, verse 7 says, it should be an everlasting covenant between me and your generations forever. Milam.
Yep.
And then it says in verse 14, any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised shall be cut off from his people because he has broken my covenant. How do we reconcile those things? How is it forever if you can be cut off from it?
Well, there's still an action that must be taken there, because if you're uncircumcised and you do not get circumcised, then you're not a part of the covenant.
You're not part of the people. You're not part of the Am. So you're, and we'll talk about how that relates to baptism. Okay. So baptism is something that's debated in our denominations, and we all have different ideas, and we, we look at it in different ways, and we have creeds, and we have things that we, interpret. And some denominations are like, if you don't get baptized in exactly this way, you'll be cut off from the people.
Yeah.
You're not really Christian. You won't be in heaven. Okay.
And they sound just like that.
Exactly like that. Okay. I've heard it. Okay. So we'll talk about some of these issues. All right. So We talked about the Abrahamic covenant sealing the promise is sealed. This covenant is sealed in verse 1 through 11 with circumcision. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. Okay. So there's some theological points we need to talk about. All right, and then we're going to get into some of the some of you people don't like the gobbledygook and the weeds, right? We're going to get into some of that stuff, all right? Because that's not important at all. Because it's only Christ crucified, right?
That's right.
We can't get into the other stuff.
No.
By God calling Abram at the time, he's promising him that the nations of the earth would be blessed in the number of the stars in heaven. We talked about that in Genesis 15, all right? And that's when, again, the physical manifestation of Yahweh took him outside and showed him that. Now, and we read that passage where, does that mean he's looking down on the stars, or does it mean he's looking up the stars? We don't know. Is it an ascension into the high heaven that's looking down on the stars? We don't know. I mean, come on, we don't know. But anyway, he shows him the stars, and he promises them. And we talked about how that's not just the number. Okay, it's not just quantity, it's also quality. And we talked about how that was kind of the deification. The process of glorification, deification of people, all right? Okay, so here's some of the theological points. Circumcision signified that sin needs to be removed, okay? So with the removal of the foreskin, it's associated with uncleanness, all right? By this act, God was showing to Abram, and so this is me preaching a sermon here. These are my points, okay? So it's associated with uncleanness. By this act, God was showing to Abraham and to those that would be blessed through him that sin needed to be removed in order for salvation to occur. And we're going to get into that. I mean, that's what Paul is talking about in Colossians 2. Okay. The prophet Jeremiah spoke God's word using this imagery when he said, "Circumcise yourselves to the Lord and remove the foreskins of your hearts by repenting of their sins." Jeremiah 4:4. That this work of sin removal was ultimately one of a spiritual nature of the Lord's doing is seen in Deuteronomy 36. We talked about, and Moses, or whoever wrote Deuteronomy, is talking about this. Let the Lord your God will circumcise your heart and your hearts of your descendants. Circumcise your heart and your hearts to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, that you may live. Okay? That's Shema. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, right? Correct. Number one. Sin had to be removed. That's kind of the significance of it. Okay. Circumcision signified that this salvation would come through blood and pain. With circumcision, there's blood. If you've ever witnessed a brit, a bris, then you know that there's blood involved. Okay. I've only got one male that was born to me as a baby. We have 3 sons. One was circumcised, and I saw it, and there was blood. I mean, as a baby, there's blood. Ouch. Right? And pain. There's pain involved. Yeah. That's why we do it as babies, because they don't remember it, okay?
Thankfully.
But when Abraham got circumcised, he was 99 years old. Dude remembers it, right?
You think?
Can you imagine? Without modern anesthesia and modern medicine? I just can't even imagine it.
Come on.
Okay, blood and pain. Just as other sacrifices and rituals of the sacrificial system in the Old Testament taught that without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sins, right? Circumcision is a part of that. Certainly it was bloody. Okay, we're going to talk about, so when Moses' wife, Zipporah, was forced to circumcise their son, she put we're going to talk about what it means where he touched Moses' feet, okay, regel. It talks about touched the foreskin to Moses' feet. We're going to talk about that, and called him a bridegroom of blood, okay? She didn't touch his feet, okay? We're going to talk about why that is, okay? Okay, so let's read Exodus 4.
Start at verse 18. Moses went back to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, "Please let me go back to my brothers in Egypt to see whether they are still alive." And Jethro said to Moses, "Go in peace." And the Lord said to Moses in Midian, "Go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life are dead." So Moses took his wife and his sons and had them ride on a donkey and went back to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the staff of God in his hand. And the Lord said to Moses, "When you go back to Egypt, see that you do before Pharaoh all the miracles that I have put in your power. but I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son. And I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, behold, I will kill your firstborn son. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. Then Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it and said, surely you are the bridegroom of blood to me. So he let him alone. It was then that she said, a bridegroom of blood because of the circumcision.
Okay, this is a very interesting passage, and we're going to get really into the deep of it when we talk about, when we get to Exodus in a few years. Okay?
Yeah.
So remember, Moses is a whiner. All right? One, he's got a really bad temper.
Mm-hmm.
So So it drives me crazy when people romanticize like some of the biblical heroes. Moses was chosen by God to lead the people for many reasons, but dude had some major character flaws. All right?
Yeah.
So one, he had a really bad temper. We've seen that multiple times throughout the account. Okay, he saw an Egyptian guy beating one of his Hebrew brothers, and he killed him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not a good dude. Doesn't just kill somebody like that.
Right.
Okay.
And then try to run
And
hide from it.
then he's found out, and he runs away. Okay. It is what it is. He also was a whiner and a coward. Okay. He was afraid to obey the Lord, and he tried to talk the Lord out of being the guy many times. We'll talk about that at the story of the burning bush. So at this point, Moses doesn't look like a good guy in our narrative. God's still chosen him. God still uses him. Thankfully, God uses people with character flaws. Because if he didn't, and none of us would be used.
No hope for anyone. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because we all have character flaws. We all have major sin issues in our life. All of us. So thank you, Lord, for using us even when we have major sin issues. Okay. So Moses went back to Jethro, and he said, please let me go back to my brothers in Egypt to see whether they're still alive. And Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. Okay? Masalama. And the Lord said to Moses and Midian, go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life are dead. So Moses took his wife and his sons and had them ride on a donkey, and then went back to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the staff of God in his hand. All right? And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do before Pharaoh all the miracles that I put in your power. But I will harden his heart so that I will harden his heart. Okay, this is the Lord being sovereign and in control of the whole situation. Mm-hmm. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son. Is Israel really his firstborn son? No, of course not. But he's as a firstborn son.
We've talked about this many times.
Status. It's about status. Yeah. Okay. It's not about literally he's the firstborn son. Come on. Yeah. And I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, behold, I will kill your firstborn son. Okay. And again, when we get to Exodus, we'll talk about all these theological points. Okay. Pharaoh is the son of Re. The Pharaoh is known as the son of Re, the son of the god Re. All right. And so it's the son of Re versus the son of God. That's what Israel. So that it's like a clash between the sons of these deities. Okay, who's going to win? Well, we know who's going to win. Okay, mm-hmm. God punishes not just Re through Pharaoh, but also all of the other deities of Egypt, and we'll get into that. Okay, verse 24 is the interesting part where we get back to our circumcision narrative. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met him. So what does that mean?
Physical manifestation. Yeah.
Over and over and over again. Okay, a spirit doesn't just meet you. Okay, a spirit just vaporizes, right?
Yeah.
So the Lord is the angel of Yahweh, which you've talked about over and over again. The angel of the Lord he meets him, all right? The physical manifestation of Yahweh, and sought to put him to death, okay?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to talk. Why did he want to put him to death? Well, first of all, he's a whiner, and we're going to see that the reason he wanted to put him to death is because he didn't do what he was supposed to do. And remember, in verse 14, anyone not circumcised will be cut off from my people. Okay? So remember, the consequences of sin are always death
Death and separation.
and separation. Okay, so death or being outside the people. Okay, so that's why if you are not circumcised, you're outside separation. Okay, so Zipporah, for some reason, knew what was happening and why Moses was about to die. I mean, and it doesn't tell us like the details of the encounter with the Lord. Did the Lord like say to Moses, "I'm going to kill you because you're not circumcised"? I mean, we don't know. I wish we had the details there. I wish we could see this encounter. But anyway, for some reason, Zipporah knew that what to do. Okay, so instead of cutting off, we're not going to get into the details. Instead of circumcising Moses, right? She circumcised.
Oh gosh.
Lop. Little mini guillotine there.
Oh my gosh.
I
Lock.
got a multi-tool Leatherman. Just to make sure.
I mean, that's just as good as a flint knife. She took it's a flint knife. So for some reason, Zipporah knew what to do, and so she cut off her son. Jeez, I did it again.
What is it? No, cut off her son's
Foreskin.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, it says it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it says it in the Bible, so I can say it.
Yeah.
So she cut off her son's foreskin.
Yeah.
And touched Moses' quote feet.
Yeah.
Okay, surely bridegroom of blood to me. Okay. So what are some of the issues here? Well, what does it mean when you touch the foreskin to Moses' feet? Okay.
That's a great question.
That's a great question because it doesn't make any sense at all. It makes no sense at all. Okay. So, all right. That's one issue. The other issue is we don't know exactly who are the actors because if we go back and look at the Hebrew, it's very ambiguous who is who when it says him.
Are you talking about the pronouns?
Yeah, the pronouns are very ambiguous. So we don't know what's exactly going on. Okay. What does the pronoun refer to when it says his or him? Is it Moses or is it his son? They're both masculine, so it could be either one. All right. So the masculine pronoun could refer to either one. Gotcha. You have to kind of make an interpretive guess based on the context, right? And we've kind of come up with a consensus about what most people think. All right.
Yeah.
We just have to interpret it. So translators try to do a pretty good job of that, but sometimes we don't exactly get because we're translating from one even language system. Again, these Semitic languages have its own system, and our Germanic-based English is a hodgepodge. It's mostly Germanic, but it's got all other crap mixed in too, right? So when we're translating English, it's even a little bit more convoluted than some other languages, all right? Like Latin-based languages. So we do a good job most of the time, but sometimes we don't, okay? So there's two things to look at. First, who is it the Lord wanted to kill? Most people think that it's Moses, right? Most readers would assume that, and that's how our English translations interpret that. We point to that. Since he's mentioned in the preceding verses, but verse 24 doesn't actually name him as the person he wanted to kill. So at a lodging place, the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. Now, the whole narrative that we've been talking about before is talking about Moses, right? So we assume, our translators have, that the him is talking about Moses, okay? And that's kind of what most people land on. And I think that's logical, okay? It doesn't make sense that he would put his son to death, right? Even though he's not circumcised, okay? And we'll talk about, is Moses circumcised or not? We'll talk about that, what that means, okay? Right. The other thing is we talked about what does it mean to touch Moses' feet with the foreskin? All right. How in the world does Zipporah know what to do? We've talked about that.
Yeah, you would. I mean, it seems like it's almost like it's a custom because if she knows what to do,
remember she's
either seen it before or done it before. Yeah.
Okay. So who is Zipporah's father? Jethro.
Yes. You didn't let me get there.
Sorry. Okay. Let's do it again.
I'm just messing.
Let's try that again.
I don't care.
So who is Zipporah's father?
Jethro,
right? Yeah. So Jethro is the priest, the high priest of God, of Yahweh to Midian. That's who he is. Yeah. That's his job, all right? Correct. His job description, all right? high priest of Midian to Yahweh, right? So the Midianites are Kenites, right? Kenites were people closely associated with Israelites. Okay, they weren't Israelites, but they were closely associated with them, and they
Would
worshiped.
you say they are kin?
They're kin.
To the
They're Kenites.
Nice.
Again, we're from the South, so kin.
Kin.
They're kinfolk.
They were kin.
All right, so the kinfolk, they're kinfolk of the
Israelites.
of the Israelites. All right, so they worship Yahweh. They knew the customs. They practiced circumcision. All right, so we assume that Zipporah is familiar with this custom of circumcision. We don't know if Zipporah had brothers, but we assume that maybe she did, or at least she knew the rites and things surrounding circumcision. Okay. She knows what should be done, and she knows how to do it. She knows how it's done. So that's going to be a factor in the interpretation as well. Okay? So we talked about the Kenites.
Which means Moses also knew that it should have been done.
Yes. Moses knew. Okay. So with whom was God angry? Why was God angry? It seems best to conclude that God is angry with Moses and not his son. Again, we talked about how Moses was kind of a whiner. He was a murderer, and he tried to get out of what God wanted him to do. I mean, he tried to come up with every excuse in the book. I can't talk. Every excuse in the book, right? And so God conceded and gave him Aaron to be his spokesperson, right? Because Moses just wasn't going to do it. So again, at first, it looks like Moses is a weak leader from the very beginning. He's an unwilling, weak leader, okay, with major character flaws. So the Lord uses charismatic, really strong people that have really high, great personalities, right? That's who he uses. Not always. And so, sometimes he can. He can use whoever he wants to. But in this case, for 1 Corinthians 1, he used the weak things of the world, right? So in this case, he's using the weak things of the world. Moses starts out really, really poorly in his mission with God, right? So we assume that God is angry with him, but he's angry for a specific reason, okay? Gershom is known, so his son Gershom is only known from Exodus 2:22, okay? That's the only one that's named, right? So despite the fact that it's the circumcision of the child that fixes the problem, is God's anger pacified just by circumcising the boy, or is something else needed? Well, obviously something else needed, because it wasn't just when Zipporah circumcised Gershom that his anger was abated, okay? It was when she put the foreskin at his, quote, feet. Okay? All right. So let's talk about this. They were circumcised according to what God had done and he told Abraham to do. We just read the story, Genesis 17. Joshua 5:2-9.
At that time, the Lord said to Joshua, make flint knives and circumcise the sons of Israel a second time. So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the sons of Israel at Gibeath-Haaraloth. And this is the reason why Joshua circumcised them. All the males of the people who came out of Egypt, all the men of war, had died in the wilderness on the way after they had come out of Egypt. Though all the people who came out had been circumcised, yet all the people who were born on the way in the wilderness after they had come out of Egypt had not been circumcised. For the people of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness until all the nation, the men of war who came out of Egypt, perished because they did not obey the voice of the Lord. The Lord swore to them that he would not let them see the land that the Lord had sworn to their fathers to give to us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So it was their children whom he raised up in their place that Joshua circumcised. For they were uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. When the circumcising of the whole nation was finished, they remained in their places in the camp until they were healed. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you. And so the name of that place is called Gilgal to this day.
And Gilgal sounds like, if you look up in your Bible, it's kind of like rolling, right?
Cool.
Okay, so verse 4 is about the kids in the wilderness. The men were going to die. And so what happened with the kids? They had to be circumcised to be part of the Am, right?
Yeah.
To be part of the family, to be part of the people, okay? Yet all the people who were born on the way these kids that had been born had not been circumcised, okay? But the men had been circumcised, okay? So the first part of verse 5 says that the people who had come out of Egypt had been circumcised, right? Mm-hmm. So in Egypt, they were doing circumcision, right?
Yeah.
Or before that. It's the ones afterwards who are not, the ones that were born. So what does it mean when it says second time? They were circumcised a second time. What does that mean? They were circumcised a second time.
It's almost like it seems to me that it's almost like marking a time period, because when they were in Egypt, they were going about their lives, of course, under slavery. They were performing circumcision, and then God let them out of the wilderness, and then, of course, they rebelled and made them wander 40 years. And so now it's like, okay, now that time's over, you're going to be set apart again, essentially. But it's almost like a new people, because all the older ones had passed away.
And that's certainly one interpretation. A
Yeah.
lot of people interpret it in that way. Okay. If that's true, why is he mad at Moses?
Great question.
I mean,
Because Moses,
you would think that Moses, if he was circumcised in the right way, he wouldn't be angry with him. He would have chosen him from the very beginning
right?
to be part of his people. He chose him,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
So why is he so angry with Moses? Well, let's talk about that. Remember, when Moses was born, remember the circumstances, right? When Moses was born, he was hidden. He's put in a basket, right? He floats down the river. His sister Miriam follows him. Pharaoh, who finds him? Pharaoh's daughter adopts him. Miriam says, "Hey, does his daughter know it's a Hebrew baby?" Yeah, of course she does. Of
course, yeah.
Yeah. Who else is going to put their baby in a basket down the river, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So she knows he's a Hebrew baby, right? And Miriam's a Hebrew girl that says, "Hey, you want me to find a nursemaid for him?" And she's like, "Sure, why not?" And so his mom, who just had birthed him, is the nursemaid. So nurses her own son, right? Till he's weaned. Okay? So Egyptian circumcision as a method, it's not religious, so they didn't do it religiously. Remember, we just read the passage from Herodotus. They do it for cleanliness. That's why they did it, so they could clean themselves a little easier, all right? It wasn't done in honor of some god. It was for cleanliness, all right? We just read that from Herodotus. It refers to a method. It's possible that Moses and the other Israelite men were circumcised according to the Egyptian custom. In the Egyptian custom, and this is from there's the Egyptologists and archaeologists say that the circumcision practiced by Egypt and by the Egyptians, where they didn't remove the foreskin, they would slit the foreskin to make sure you can be able to clean easier,
but not remove it completely.
but not remove the foreskin, right? So maybe that's why they had to be circumcised a second time. Okay? Maybe. Okay. The reproach from Egypt, remember it talked about removing the reproach from Egypt. Is that like what you were talking about? Does that mean the bondage to slavery? Because God came to be, because where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom.
Yeah.
We're not under bondage. We're not supposed to be oppressed. Psalm 82. Okay, that's why the gods are punished and thrown in the lake of fire eventually. But we are not supposed to be oppressed. We're supposed to be free. We're supposed to be God's people, alive and free. John 10:10, right? So it's possible that the circumcision had to be done in the proper way according to what he told Abraham to do, right? So, bottom line, I think maybe Moses was circumcised in the Egyptian way. He wasn't circumcised in the way that God had intended. So he wasn't, again, we tell our kids to obey right away, all the way, and a happy way, right? We tell them that all the time, right? You have to obey right away, which Moses was reluctant to do. You have to do it all the way, so not just part of the way, and in a happy way. Well, Moses wasn't doing any of those things in obedience to God. He wasn't happy. He was whining the whole time. He didn't do it all the way. If this is true, that's why he was circumcised in the Egyptian manner, okay? And he sure wasn't happy about it. Okay, so I think this is Nathan's interpretation that that's probably what's happening here. Okay, that God was angry at Moses, and it was not just because It wasn't just because of one thing. It was because of all the things that had happened to this point. And he's like, forget it. I'm starting over. I'll choose someone else. And my plan will be with someone else. I mean, you've been resisting me, stubborn, whining, killing people, not circumcised right. I'm done with you. So I think that's kind of what's happening here. That's Nathan's interpretation. Okay.
Sounds valid, though. I mean, I honestly didn't know anything about the way Egyptians circumcised. So if it wasn't a proper circumcision, then.
Yeah, and I think it's the same thing. I think Gershom was probably circumcised in the same way. So it makes sense because with all the passages, the Joshua passages, and then Moses and Gershom, they all had to be circumcised a second time, right? Yeah. So if they have to be circumcised a second time, it's because they were only circumcised in one way. So they weren't obeying all the way.
Right.
Okay. And God said you had to be circumcised all the way. Okay. I think that's what's happening. So Zipporah. So, all right. Second issue with that. If that's true, and that very well may, and that's what I think is happening, according to what the archaeologists and Egyptologists are saying. Okay. If that's true, why didn't she just, if Zipporah knows what to do, why didn't she just circumcise Moses?
That's a great question. I don't know.
What? Okay. So if we don't know how old Gershom is, but we're assuming he's pretty young. Okay. So if your son is as little, you can circumcise him. He's going to be in pain, even if he's a baby. But can you travel with a young kid easily without? Yes. What if Moses is circumcised as an old man?
It's going to take a few
40-year-old, 80-year-old.
He doesn't have a bag of peas he can sit down there.
No,
so.
it's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
Okay. My kids were my younger two boys were adopted from Colombia, and they were not circumcised. Okay, so this is Nathan Parvin. I'm telling you what I think. Okay, and we're going to get into do you have to be circumcised? Should you be circumcised? Things like that. Y'all know I love the Old Testament. You know, my tradition here, a lot of evangelical Christian people in the United States are circumcised when we're babies. You know, most of us here, that's our culture. Our adopted sons were not in Colombia. Okay, so we had them circumcised as 10 and 8-year-old. Okay, just because that's my belief. All right, so we had that done with them. I think they should be. So when they were circumcised, they were out for a while. I mean, they were 10 and 8, okay? And they were out for a while. So what if an 80-year-old man gets circumcised? Dude's out for a few weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, he ain't moving.
No.
All right. On a donkey.
Yeah.
Okay. From Midian to Egypt. Tough road.
That is
right?
tough.
Up and down mountains and around valleys and rocks and tough road.
That landscape is not forgiving.
No.
For sure.
So he's already God in our story is already like, you got to go right now, right? And so what if he's already not obeying right away? God's like, you got to go now. This is the time, okay? Because God's timing is perfect. And so he would be out for a while. So it would postpone the Exodus for a certain amount of time when we think God had perfect timing. So anyway, he wouldn't be able to do it. That's why she didn't maybe circumcise Moses and she circumcised Gershom, okay? Feet. The Hebrew word for feet, regel, can refer to feet, legs, or genitals. Okay? It's a euphemism in many passages in the Bible for genital area. Okay? We're going to read a few of those passages here and briefly. Deuteronomy 28:57. Her afterbirth, this is part of law, that comes from between her feet and her children whom she bears. Okay, so the afterbirth doesn't come from her feet. It comes from the genital area. Regel.
Yeah.
Okay. Ezekiel 16:25. Now this is pretty graphic. Okay, God is using graphic language to emphasize a point, a polemic about how horrible Israel's sin is. Okay, verse 23. Let's read verse 23 through 25.
And after all your wickedness, woe to you, declares the Lord God. You built yourself a vaulted chamber and made yourself a lofty place in every square. At the head of every street you built your lofty place and made your beauty an abomination. offering yourself to any passerby and multiplying your whoring.
Okay, so he's comparing Israel to a prostitute, right? A really bad prostitute.
Yeah.
Okay, the ESV's offering yourself, which you read the ESV, it is literally spreading your regel, spreading your feet. Okay, exposing your genitals. Okay, that's what it means. Okay, it's euphemistic language for the genital area. All right, Ruth 3:4. All right, we'll have to explain this just a little bit too. Let's read Ruth 3:4.
Naomi tells Ruth, when Boaz lies down, observe the place where he lies. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do.
Okay, so Boaz is not laying down in bed and she uncovers his feet. Okay, she's uncovering literally his genitals. That's what she's doing, and it doesn't indicate there's anything sexual happening here.
Yeah.
Basically, what she's saying is, I want to marry you. Okay, once you're uncovered, you have to marry me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't uncover someone's nakedness. You have to marry them at that point. That's their custom. Now, Boaz, and again, Boaz goes through the correct Deuteronomical way to according to the law, to marry her. I mean, he wants to marry her, but he has to go, and she has to be redeemed by someone else. The redemption has to be passed on from someone else first, okay? And that's what they do. The whole point is that the reference to the regel is Boaz's genitals. It's not his feet, okay? So when Zipporah touched the foreskin of her son, of Moses' son, Zipporah performs the circumcision, takes the foreskin, and touches Moses' genitals. Okay? Well, that's what it means. All right? So Moses' own circumcision was not adequate. He didn't do it in the right way. Okay? She could have circumcised him, but the trip would be prolonged and he would be in disobedience even longer. Right? So she did what, we don't know why, we don't have the details, how, one, she knew how to do circumcision, she knew that's what had to be done, or she knew that transferring a circumcision to Moses by touching his genital area would pass that on and abate the Lord's wrath. We don't know those details. Oh, man, I wish we did. We'll have to ask some of these. I got a long list of stuff to ask. I got a long list of stuff to ask. So I'm going to add this to it too. But he has to be approved. He has to be looped into the covenant relationship by proxy. Okay, this is living vicariously through his son, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So many parents do that, but he literally is living vicariously through the circumcision of his son, right? All right. So Zipporah is the only person that was available. So this is another issue that we have to talk about. Zipporah is performing an act of a priest.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is interesting when we talk about the argument between some of our factions about how can women do ministry, and what does Paul say, so when we get into the debate of egalitarianism versus complementarianism, of course we're from Baptist background,
yeah.
So we are immersed in mostly the complementarian idea, right?
Yeah.
Which it seems like that's what Paul's saying. But egalitarianism, which means that women can serve roles under certain circumstances, one of the points that they make is this exact passage. Zipporah performs the task of a priest in this case. And does Yahweh accept that? Yes. Did Moses live? Yes. So Zipporah acting as a priest and performing a priestly function is acceptable to the Lord in this case. And that's what one of their arguments is. And I see what they're saying. Okay.
Were there priests in function right now during this time as they're walking?
We don't know exactly.
Yeah, I didn't think it. I didn't know. I didn't remember it being discussed.
Yeah, we don't exactly know. We don't know exactly how long it took for all of those things to, to build a tabernacle and to come up with all the things, it takes time.
It does, yeah.
It takes time in today's world, modern world, we can just order stuff from China and it's, it takes time, right? Yeah. But in that ancient, they had to manufacture everything by hand.
Yeah, they did.
People had to do it.
Yeah.
So it's going to take some time to get everything together. We don't know exactly when the priestly function happened. Again, Moses and Aaron were all Levites, right? And Aaron's role, we don't know. We know when Moses went up into Sinai, they recognized Aaron as a priest because he's the one that offered the golden calf. He's the one that accepted the golden calf. And so he got in trouble by that. Again, God's grace is just amazing throughout this whole story. And we'll go into some of these details later when we get to Exodus in a few years. Okay?
Gotcha.
All right. The second thing, you are a bridegroom of blood to me. Okay? What does that mean? Well,
No idea.
it's a weird phrase that's been debated for a long time. Okay. Circumcision is in ancient times, in the ancient Near East, and in certain cultures today, is a pre-marriage ritual, right? It's always a pre-marriage ritual, okay? Performed on a male infant as the sign of the covenant. Circumcision identified a male as an Israelite for the sake of Israelite women, okay? So if someone is not circumcised, then they're not available to be married to them, right? They're not going to be accepted by the family. They're only supposed to marry fellow Israelites who are accepted into the family, accepted into the people, by the rite of circumcision. Circumcision and its meanings has to do with marriage, that the marriage is legit. So within the people, within the community. So to know that they were both Israelites, there was no forbidden intermarriage taking place. Okay, so Zipporah had learned and embraced the idea that the God of the mountain, okay, the mountain of Midian, where Moses first encountered Yahweh, okay, that this was the God of the Israelites and the God of the Kenites, and he was the true God. So she knew that, she believed it. Her father was the priest of Yahweh in Midian, right? He was the God of the Israelites, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So under those circumstances, her husband would have been a circumcised Israelite man, but that's not what's going on between the two of them, right? He's not. This ritual circumcision by proxy made Moses her bridegroom of blood. It legitimized him as an Israelite man, and she could officially marry him and be insecure in a marriage within this covenant relationship with Yahweh, okay? So the ritual act of touching the foreskin to Moses' genital area atoned for his lack of obedience. So it made him part of the family at this time. So he wasn't before then, all right? Zipporah literally saves Moses. She saves his life by performing this priestly act, okay? The circumstances are unusual, but that's it. Aaron could have done it, but he wasn't there.
Right.
She's the only one to perform the priestly act, and the Lord accepts that from a woman.
Yeah.
That was one of those theological points, and we talked all about the bridegroom of blood because we were talking
we
about. Okay, it was painful. Jacob's sons tricked the men of Shechem to circumcise themselves, then attacked them on the third day when they were in pain. Genesis 34:25. So we talked about that.
So, Nathan, we've been going for a little over an hour, and we're just now getting through the Genesis part.
We're not even to the third theological point of circumcision.
Right.
So
what we're going to do, we're going to take a break. This will be part 1 of circumcision, and then we're going to come back and finish up part 2 next time. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Covenants and Kingdoms.
bye, guys. Thanks for joining us.